It's April 7th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with the early presidential race here in South Korea. The People Power Party is set to launch an election committee on Monday to begin preparations for an early presidential election. The leader of the main opposition party, Lee Jae-myung, is expected to drop his leadership and officially declare his run for the election in the coming days. National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik proposed on Sunday that a national referendum to revise the constitution be held simultaneously on the day of a snap presidential election, saying it's to ensure popular sovereignty and national unity. There will be no delay in the imposition of tariffs, the U.S. Commerce Department has confirmed. According to Trump officials, more than 50 countries have contacted the U.S. looking to negotiate tariffs. A snap presidential election following former President Yoon Suk-yeol's dismissal last week has reportedly been set for June 3rd. And presidential race is heating up as there are now less than 2 months to elect a new leader. Our Shin Ha-young starts us off.
The date for South Korea's 21st presidential election has been tentatively set for June 3rd. That's according to Yonhap News Agency, with the date expected to be confirmed at Tuesday's cabinet meeting. South Korea's presidential race is heating up as rival parties roll up their sleeves to prepare for a 2-month race following the Constitutional Court's decision to remove former President Yoon Suk-yeol from office. The People Power Party on Sunday decided to continue with its current leadership, with interim leader Kwon Young-se and floor leader Kwon Sung-dong set to stay. Some argued they should step down over the president's impeachment, but most felt it was better to keep them to help stabilize the party and prepare for the upcoming election.
The party lawmakers reaffirmed their confidence in the current leadership to carry out the remaining presidential election process.
The PPP also decided to form an election committee on Monday for the upcoming presidential primary. The party does not have a clear frontrunner, with some local media outlets expecting as many as 10 contenders to enter the race. Among them is Daegu Mayor Hong Jun-pyo, who hinted at another run after he finished second to Yoon Suk-yeol in the party's 2022 presidential primary. Seoul Mayor Oh Se-un is also frequently mentioned as a potential candidate. The most high-profile name, however, is former party chair Han Dong-un, once a close confidant of Yoon, who later distanced himself from the former president and publicly supported impeachment following the martial law declaration. Meanwhile, Democratic Party chair Lee Jae-myung, widely seen as the likely DP candidate, is expected to step down from his leadership role and make an official declaration to enter the race as early as Wednesday. Running as party chair could raise concerns about bias in the primary process. Local media anticipate that his formal announcement will come when the presidential election date is officially confirmed. Once he steps down, the DP plans to hold a meeting to set up an election committee for the primary.
We only have about 30 days for the primary, so we need to sort out any party rules, make changes if needed, and set up the election committee to get ready for the presidential race.
Politicians outside E's faction within the DP are also preparing to enter the race, with official announcements expected as early as Monday. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
And over the weekend, National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik suggested a referendum on the election day to revise the constitution. Now, it'll be aimed at reorganizing power structure, he says. Our Kim Do-yeon tells us more.
Calls for constitutional reform surface almost every election season in South Korea. But this time, National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik says it must happen, and soon. He's pushing for a nationwide referendum to take place within the next 60 days along the upcoming presidential election triggered by President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. Speaking on Sunday, Woo emphasized that although the declaration of martial law was ultimately blocked, it revealed serious vulnerabilities in the country's democracy.
To break this vicious cycle, we must pave the way before the new president's term begins. Now is the perfect time to achieve constitutional reform, as the public's call for decentralization of power, popular sovereignty, and national unity has never been clearer. I propose holding a national referendum on constitutional amendment on the same day as the upcoming presidential election.
To move the process forward, Speaker Wu also proposed launching a special committee dedicated to constitutional amendments. He said the first round of reform aimed at aligning with the presidential election timeline would focus on the division of power. A second round of proposed changes could follow during next year's nationwide local elections. When asked whether he was referring to a 4-year presidential term with the possibility of re-election similar to the US model, Wu said it's an idea both major parties appeared open to. However, he emphasized that the specifics would be discussed within the newly proposed committee. On the other hand, the leadership and senior members of the Democratic Party of Korea, also the party the speaker is from, said it's not the time for this reform yet. While the chair of the DP, Lee Jae-myung, did not directly respond, those close to him said that now is the time to put effort into holding those who started the insurrection responsible. The People Power Party interim chair, however, said the party is unchanged in its stance on constitutional reform and welcomed the idea. Kwon Young-se said that the floor leader will come up with those joining the special committee proposed by the speaker and that all details will be discussed there. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Now that South Korea took the weekend to digest and cool off following Friday's final verdict, politicians are now gearing up to map out a new administration. Let us discuss more with Professor Mason Ricci. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to start with the Assembly Speaker's proposal on a referendum on the election day to revise the Constitution. How likely do you think that such a proposal will be realized?
I'll believe it when I see it. I've been here for a long time and I've seen this come up many times. And the exact same schema is taking place that's taken place before, which is to say that the party that's likely to win the presidency suddenly loses interest in this type of constitutional reform. And the party that's likely to be out of power in the presidential office is all of a sudden in favor of reform that's going to limit the presidency. We've already seen that with the PPP suddenly on board that this is a good idea. Of course, this all really started after the martial law in December when this was already coming up among certain party members. And that was obviously because they knew that they were very likely to be out of power again. And of course, in the past, we've seen the Democratic Party of Korea be in favor of this constitutional reform. And now that we see that Lee Jae-myung is likely to be the next president, all of a sudden, people around Lee Jae-myung are also saying that this isn't the right time to do that. So I'll believe it when I see it.
So what we do know is that Lee Jae-myung is one of the top contenders for the upcoming election. But why has he kept a low profile ever since the final verdict came out last week? I mean, what is he waiting for? Any strategic move behind this?
Well, I certainly don't have any insight into the discussions that have been taking place behind closed doors among the Democratic Party, but the political calculus on this would be in the first place, of course, just making sure that if you're Lee Jae-myung in the Democratic Party, that you dot your I's and you cross your T's as you are preparing for the post-impeachment phase and the post-removal phase. Obviously they're going to be switching from a sort of, posture that was intended to try to make sure that Yoon Suk-yeol was removed, beginning to try to convince the electorate to vote for Lee Jae-myung. So I think that's part of it. Secondly, I think there's been a period of waiting on the election announcement. We know that informally, it looks like the state council will decide that June 3rd is going to be the election date. That's probably going to be ratified by the council meeting officially tomorrow. And then I think the thing is Lee Jae-myung might be wanting to sort of stake out the high ground, right? There's no reason for him to look desperate and launch his campaign quickly. He is already a known quantity, and it's easier for him to stake out the high ground as the dominant alpha candidate within his own party.
Then would you say he will quit his position as the party leader once a new party leader is elected?
Yeah, so my understanding is there's supposed to be a meeting this week of the Supreme Council of the Democratic Party in the coming days, and we know that party statements have indicated that as well. And of course, that makes sense. They will want to have a new party leader because Lee Jae-myung will and arguably should step down from that post. If for no other reason, then he needs to begin to position himself as a candidate to be the president of all of the Korean people and not just a party leader. And so there's a sort of conceptual distinction there.
So there's that for the Democratic Party of Korea. Now, the People Power Party took the weekend to really reflect on the ruling, but there's not much time to take things slowly now that we only have less than 60 days to carry out the election, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And it seems to me, at least, that the PPP hasn't done a whole lot of reflecting on the impeachment. Frankly, they seem unreconstructed. So, we'll see how they move forward. Obviously, there's a number of potential candidates that have started to hit the ground running. This was already taking place behind the scenes during the period of the impeachment trial at the Constitutional Court. I know a number of conservatives who were very carefully pushing their pawns out to try to figure out who it is that they might align themselves with, which discussion groups that they would be a part of, and that sort of thing for which candidate. But nobody really wanted to stick their neck out yet because at that point Yoon had not been removed and there was a chance that he wasn't going to be. So no one wanted to look within the party disloyal to the party and disloyal to Yoon. But now, of course, that he's been removed from office, those constraints are off. And so we're going to see Kim Moon-soo, who seems to be sort of the leading candidate and who was a Yoon supporter during the impeachment period, kind of likely to be, I think, for the moment, the person ahead. We've seen Hong Joon-pyo already announce that he's going to run. Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon obviously is going to run as well, although he has some scandals now around his neck, as do some other. Lee Jun-suk, of course, is a very big dark horse candidate here. Doesn't really have the support from the Yoon faction, obviously, for known reasons. Han Dong-hoon is in a similar situation, but he may end up being a candidate in one form or another. And then we have An Chol-soo, who's a sort of perpetual also-ran, who's also throwing his name in the ring and is also very unlikely to get the nomination.
There's the list from the ruling People Power Party. Professor Ricci, I asked you this on Friday when the final verdict came out. How do you think the PPP, which is no longer a ruling party, will separate itself from the former President Yoon now?
Obviously, that's really hard to say. It doesn't look like on the surface that the party has really moved on from Yoon. They have backed themselves into a corner during the impeachment vote process at the National Assembly, and then in the weeks and months following it, during the Constitutional Court impeachment trial, and also during the standoff over Yoon's arrest. And so they've tied themselves in some sense to their base who supports Yoon. So it's going to be really hard for a candidate who wants to truly turn the page on what happened with the martial law declaration. It's going to be hard for a candidate who really wants to turn the page on that to push through, because the base supporters of the PPP were whipped up into a frenzy, either by themselves through conspiracy theories or through the party itself, unfortunately. And so I think it's going to be hard for them to fully turn the page on Yoon. I don't think Yoon is beloved. I don't think the party really ever developed much of a love for him. But certainly his base supports him. And so the PPP candidates are going to, in some sense, have to reckon with that one way or the other.
All right. It was good to see you again, Professor Ricci. Thank you, as always, for your insight. We appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having me.
U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff announcements have triggered massive sell-offs across South Korea's stock market this morning. As of 9:02 a.m., the KOSPI index stood at 2,352.72, down more than 4% from the previous session, while the tech-heavy KOSPI index fell by more than 3%. And the KOSPI 200 futures index fell 5.19%, triggering a sell-side sidecar for the first time in 8 months at 9:12 a.m. Now, a sidecar is activated when the KOSPI 200 futures index rises or falls by 5% or more and stays there for at least 1 minute. And just hours before the shock to the South Korean stock market on Monday, the U.S. confirmed the recent reciprocal tariffs imposed by Washington will not be delayed and that they will begin on April 9th. Our Lee Seung-jae has the details.
U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said Sunday that U.S. President Donald Trump will go ahead with reciprocal tariffs announced last week, stressing that there would be no postponement. Speaking to CBS News, the Commerce Secretary stressed the Trump administration's move to close all potential loopholes in the tariff policy, reaffirming that the sweeping reciprocal tariffs will go into effect on April 9th as scheduled. Lutnick shot down any idea that Trump would pause for negotiations, saying tariffs would remain in place for days and weeks. Meanwhile, as Wall Street took a dive after the announcement of the reciprocal tariffs last week, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent dismissed the idea that the levies would cause a recession in the U.S. Speaking to NBC on Sunday, Bessent said he wasn't worried about last week's stock market sell-off, adding that the market has consistently underestimated President Trump. He stressed that there is no reason that the U.S. would have to price in a recession. Bessent also said that more than 50 countries have begun negotiating with the U.S. since the announcement of the reciprocal tariffs. The comments go in line with Trump's remarks last week that every country has called the U.S. for talks.
What we have is a set of tariffs based on what they've been charging us. That's reciprocal. And those tariffs have come in and every country's called us. That's the beauty of what we do. We put ourselves in the driver's seat. If we would have asked some of these countries, almost most of these countries, to do us a favor, they would have said no. Now they'll do anything for us.
Neither Bessent nor any other U.S. official named the countries that have begun holding talks with Washington over the reciprocal tariffs. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
G7 foreign ministers have raised concerns over China's recent military drills around Taiwan. In a joint statement released by the top envoys, they described Beijing's recent military drills as provocative and destabilizing, and called for a dialogue for a peaceful resolution of issues. The foreign ministers said that the increasingly frequent activities are raising cross-strait tensions, adding that they're also putting global security and prosperity at risk. Last week, the Chinese military concluded 2 days of war games around Taiwan, involving long-range live fire drills. Cherry blossoms are in full bloom here in South Korea, with the country's biggest cherry blossom festival having taken place this past week. Our An Sung-jin takes us down to Changwon City.
Spring has returned. Streets filled with cherry blossoms greet those who have made their way to Jinhae district in the south coast city of Changwon. The 63rd Jinhae Gunhangjae, which lasts for 9 days, is the mecca of spring cherry blossoms, with more than 2 million visitors every year.
The cherry blossom, a symbol of spring here, is already reaching its peak here. People are out here with their family and friends to enjoy the beautiful colors and its scenery.
We're so happy to be back in Jinhae. We were here in 2013, just the two of us, and now we're here with our 3 kids. Beautiful weather and the cherry blossoms are in full bloom. It's beautiful.
I am so proud that in our country and here in Jinhae, there is such a beautiful spring blossom path.
We are in our last year of high school, so we originally came out here for graduation photos, but it feels so refreshing to see all these pretty blossoms.
The town's top cherry blossom spots include Gyeonghwa Station, an old closed-down railway station and its train tracks, as well as the Yeojacheon stream. Most areas in the south of the country have seen cherry blossoms bloom, yet with the sudden colder breeze in some areas, especially up north, they still need some time to fully bloom. Following the recent devastating wildfires in Gyeongsangbuk-do province, the festival has been reduced in scale. However, the festival still offers ample scenery while promoting local culture and boosting business in the small town. So for those who missed out this time around, make sure to be ready for next year. 안성진, 아리랑 뉴스, 진해.
Now, let's take a look at some stories from around the world with our Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Tammy.
So, Ji-hee, let's start with the U.S. announcing the revocation of visas held by South Sudanese citizens. Tell us more.
Right. So the United States has announced it will immediately revoke all visas held by South Sudanese passport holders, citing the African nation's failure to accept the return of its repatriated citizens. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said in a statement on Saturday that South Sudan's transitional government has not complied with international norms by refusing to accept its nationals deported from the United States. As a result, the U.S. Department of State is revoking all existing visas held by South Sudanese citizens and halting the issuance of new visas to these individuals. The unprecedented decision, the first of its kind aimed at a specific country since the Trump administration took office, comes amid concerns about a potential return to civil war in the African nation. Rubio accused South Sudan's government of taking advantage of the United States and added that the U.S. is prepared to review the recent actions once South Sudan demonstrates full cooperation in accepting its repatriated citizens. In the Middle East, 2 British members of parliament have been denied entry into Israel during a planned visit to the occupied West Bank. Israel accused the 2 lawmakers of plans to spread anti-Israel hatred. Labour MPs Abtissim Mohammed and Yuan Yang were detained upon arrival at Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport on Saturday local time. The Israeli Immigration Authority stated they intended to document the security forces and spread hate speech against Israel, leading to their deportation. The MPs asserted that they were part of a parliamentary delegation alongside charities visiting humanitarian aid projects in the West Bank. British Foreign Secretary David Lammy called Israel's actions unacceptable, counterproductive, and deeply concerning. In the African country of the Democratic Republic of Congo, torrential rain led to severe flooding in the capital, Kinshasa, over the weekend, resulting in at least 22 deaths. 46 people were hospitalized and 75 families also had to be temporarily relocated due to the conditions. The flooding disrupted access to more than half of the city and its main airport. While Kinshasa, home to over 12 million residents, experiences frequent flooding during the rainy season, the weekend's rain marks the city's first major deluge of the year. Similar flooding in the capital city in 2022 killed over 100 people. Finally, in the U.S. state of Los Angeles, a minke whale that had been swimming in Long Beach Harbor last week was found dead on Sunday morning local time. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration is collaborating with local officials to determine the cause of death. Earlier efforts to guide the whale out of the harbor were unsuccessful as it repeatedly returned despite attempts by experts to encourage its departure. The whale's appearance in the harbor last week had attracted crowds eager to catch a glimpse of the marine mammal.
Stunning spring flowers are welcoming the new week. Cherry blossoms have officially begun to bloom here in the capital, painting the city in beautiful shades of pink. However, please be mindful of wide temperature gap between lows and highs and do dress accordingly. And in the afternoon, temperatures will rise to 20 degrees Celsius in the capital, Daegu at 24, feeling more like the end of April in most parts of Korea under sunny skies with decent air quality. That's thanks to Saturday's day's rain that washed away lingering dust and also eased the dryness in the air. Then there will be late night spotty rain in central parts of Korea, but the amount will be less than 5 millimeters. Speaking of which, rain is in the forecast in central regions on Wednesday afternoon, spreading nationwide through Thursday dawn. Then another band of rain is in the forecast for Saturday. Meanwhile, cherry blossoms are expected to reach full bloom across many areas this week, so make the most of it if you can.
That wraps up our Monday edition of Arirang News. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful start to the week wherever you are.